The dangerous men are never the loudest ones in the room. That was the first thing my mother taught me before she died, and standing inside the Black Orchid Gala with a silver champagne tray trembling in my hands, I finally understood what she meant. The ballroom glittered like something out of a billionaire's fantasy. Crystal chandeliers the size of SUVs hung from a ceiling painted in gold leaf. Women in diamond necklaces laughed too loudly beside men whose watches probably cost more than my entire apartment building in Queens. The air smelled like expensive perfume, aged whiskey, and power. Real power. The kind that made people lower their voices without realizing it. I adjusted the sleeve of my black waitress uniform and tried not to think about the overdue tuition notice sitting unopened on my kitchen table. $12,000. 2 jobs still weren't enough. Apparently surviving in New York now required selling your soul or marrying someone rich enough to own the city. Claire, my manager hissed as he passed me carrying a tray of martinis. Table 6 wants another bottle of champagne. And stopped staring at the guests. I looked down immediately. Sorry. These people don't like being watched. Neither did predators, I thought quietly. The string quartet near the marble staircase shifted into another soft melody as servers moved through the ballroom like ghosts dressed in black and white. Nobody really saw us. We were just hands carrying drinks. Bodies cleaning messes. Invisible until someone needed something. I grabbed a fresh bottle of Dom Perignon from the bar and started toward table 6 when the entire room suddenly changed. I felt it before I understood it. Conversation slowed. Laughter faded. Even the musicians missed a note. The giant doors at the far end of the ballroom opened, and 6 men in black suits stepped inside first. Security. Not the mall cop kind. The terrifyingly calm kind. The kind who scanned exits before breathing. Then he walked in behind them. Damien DeLuca. I didn't know his name yet, but every instinct in my body reacted anyway. Tall. Broad shoulders beneath a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Dark hair brushed back neatly. From a face that looked carved out of cold marble. He wasn't the most handsome man I'd ever seen. He was worse than that. He looked untouchable. Like the kind of man who could ruin lives with a phone call and sleep perfectly fine afterward. People moved aside automatically as he crossed the ballroom. Politicians smiled too quickly. Billionaires straightened their posture. One woman near the staircase actually lowered her eyes when he passed. Fear. That's what filled the room. Not respect. Not admiration. Fear dressed up in expensive clothing. Don't look directly at him. I nearly jumped at the voice beside me. Olivia, another waitress, stepped close enough for me to smell cigarette smoke hidden beneath her vanilla perfume. Who is he? I whispered. Her expression tightened instantly. You seriously don't know? I shook my head. Olivia stared at me like I'd confessed I didn't know who the president was. That's Damien DeLuca. She lowered her voice further. And if he notices you, your life changes forever. A cold chill slid down my spine. What does he do? Olivia laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Nobody asks that question out loud. Damien stopped near the center of the ballroom, while men old enough to own private islands shook his hand nervously. He barely smiled, barely spoke. Yet somehow the entire night revolved around him anyway. Like gravity. My manager suddenly appeared beside me again. Claire, move. I blinked. What? VIP section. Now. My pulse quickened as he shoved a fresh tray of champagne flutes into my hands. And listen carefully, he muttered sharply. No mistakes around Mr. DeLuca. Of course. Because apparently the terrifying man surrounded by bodyguards was now my table. Perfect. I walked carefully across the ballroom, my flats silent against polished marble, while my heartbeat pounded so loudly I thought people might hear it over the music. Damien stood near the enormous windows overlooking Manhattan, one hand resting loosely in his pocket while rain streaked against the glass behind him. The city lights reflected across his face in silver and gold. He looked completely calm, completely controlled, like nothing in the world could surprise him anymore. I reached his table and lifted a champagne flute with steady hands that didn't feel steady at all. Champagne, sir. His eyes lifted to mine, and suddenly the room disappeared. His eyes were not cold the way I expected. Cold implied distance. Damien DeLuca's gaze felt focused. Sharp. Like standing under a spotlight you could not escape from. My fingers tightened slightly around the champagne tray as he studied me without saying a word. Up close, he looked even more dangerous somehow. Not because of his height or the men surrounding him. Because of how calm he was. The kind of calm, powerful men had when the entire world bent around them. "Sir," I asked softly, forcing my voice not to shake. For one endless second, he did not reach for the glass. He just looked at me, at my face, my uniform, the small silver necklace resting against my throat that I usually kept hidden beneath my collar. Then his eyes lifted back to mine again. "You are new here." His voice was deep and smooth, touched with the faintest trace of Italian. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, sir." "How old are you?" The question caught me off guard. 24. One of the older men beside him chuckled quietly into his whiskey glass. "Too young for this room." Damien ignored him completely. "What is your name?" "Claire Bennett." Saying it suddenly felt strange. Too personal somehow. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened slightly when I answered. "Claire." The way he said my name made it sound important, like he was memorizing it. My manager appeared beside me almost instantly, smiling too quickly. "Mr. DeLuca, I apologize if there are any issues with the service tonight. Claire is temporary staff." Temporary. I hated that word. Temporary apartment. Temporary jobs. Temporary stability. My whole life lately felt temporary. Damien finally took the champagne flute from my tray, his fingers brushing the stem with effortless precision. "She stays." My manager blinked. "Sir." At this table, the older men exchanged glances. One woman near the window openly stared at me now with narrowed eyes sharp enough to cut glass. I suddenly understood. Something important. Every person in this room watched Damien carefully because his attention meant power. And right now, somehow, his attention had landed on me. I swallowed hard. "Would you like anything else, sir?" His gaze held mine another second too long. "Not yet." I stepped away carefully, trying to ignore the strange tension crawling beneath my skin. The second I reached the service hallway behind the ballroom, Olivia grabbed my wrist. "What did you do?" she whispered urgently. "Nothing." Damien DeLuca does not notice waitresses. Apparently, he notices this one. My manager suddenly stormed toward us, his face pale beneath the hotel lighting. "Claire, what exactly did you say to him?" "Nothing inappropriate, I swear." He loosened his tie with trembling fingers. "Do you even understand who is in that ballroom tonight?" I stayed quiet. "Those are not business executives out there," he muttered. "Those are families." The way he said families made my stomach tighten. Another server rushed into the hallway carrying empty glasses. "It is starting," she whispered excitedly. "The selection ceremony." Olivia immediately straightened beside me. "Oh my God, what selection ceremony?" I asked. Neither of them answered right away. My manager looked toward the ballroom entrance before lowering his voice carefully. "Every year, certain powerful families arrange future alliances here." "You mean marriages?" He gave me a look that told me I should stop asking questions. But my curiosity was already awake now. Through the cracked ballroom doors, I could see elegant women gathering near the center staircase in glittering gowns worth more than my yearly income. Diamonds flashed beneath chandelier light. Men in black suits observed them carefully from nearby tables like investors studying expensive art. The atmosphere had changed completely. More controlled. More tense. Olivia leaned closer to me. "The rumor is Damien finally agreed to choose a wife tonight." I almost laughed at how ridiculous that sounded. Choose a wife. Like selecting a car or signing a contract. That cannot be real. In this world. Olivia glanced nervously toward the ballroom again. "Everything is real." Before I could answer, my manager shoved another tray into my hands. "VIP balcony." Now, I stared down at the crystal glasses filled with dark amber whiskey. "Me? Mr. DeLuca requested you personally." My pulse stumbled. "Why?" "Claire." His expression hardened instantly. "Do not ask questions tonight." The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as soft piano music echoed through the massive room. Conversations quieted. People turned toward the grand staircase where a silver-haired man stepped forward holding a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced smoothly. "Tonight we honor tradition." A hush spread across the ballroom like smoke. I carefully made my way toward the private balcony overlooking the crowd below. And standing there alone beside the rain-covered windows was Damien DeLuca waiting for me like he already knew I would come. The city looked unreal from the private balcony. Rain slid down the floor-to-ceiling windows in silver streams, while Manhattan glowed beneath us like a kingdom built from light. I stood frozen near the entrance holding a tray of whiskey glasses that suddenly felt too heavy for my hands. Damien DeLuca barely glanced at the skyline anymore. Men like him probably stopped being impressed by beautiful things years ago. He turned slowly when I approached, one hand resting in the pocket of his tailored coat, while thunder rolled softly outside above the city. "You are nervous," he said calmly. I tried to laugh. "I think everyone in this building is nervous around you." Something almost amused flickered across his face. "Almost. Smart people usually are." I carefully placed the whiskey tray onto the marble table between us. The crystal glasses clinked softly beneath my shaking fingers. "Your manager said you requested me." I did. His honesty caught me off guard. Most rich men played games with words. Damien spoke like someone too powerful to bother pretending. "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes lifted fully to mine again. God, those eyes were unsettling. Pale blue beneath the dim golden lighting. Calm enough to hide storms inside them. "Because every person downstairs looked at me tonight like they wanted something." He paused slightly. "You looked at me like you wanted to escape." Heat rushed into my face instantly. I did not mean to be rude. "You were honest." He stepped closer slowly, not threatening, somehow worse. Controlled. Deliberate. That is rare in my world. My pulse stumbled hard enough to hurt. I should have looked away. Every instinct told me to. But something about Damien made eye contact feel impossible to break. Like gravity pulling harder the longer you fought it. Below us, applause suddenly echoed through the ballroom. I glanced down through the balcony railing and realized the ceremony had officially started. Women in elegant gowns stood near the staircase while older men watched from nearby tables with calculating expressions hidden behind polite smiles. It did not look romantic. It looked strategic. Damien followed my gaze. "You disapprove." "It is not really my business." "Answer anyway." I hesitated. "It feels strange." Strange. Like everyone already decided these women belonged to someone before they even walked into the room. Silence stretched between us for a moment. Dangerous silence. Then Damien surprised me completely. "You are not wrong." I blinked. "Then why do it?" His jaw tightened slightly beneath the soft balcony lighting. "Because some men inherit expectations before they inherit freedom." That answer settled heavily inside my chest. For the first time since meeting him, Damien sounded tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like carrying something invisible for too many years. Another burst of applause echoed downstairs as one of the women accepted a diamond bracelet from an older man near the staircase. Transaction completed. Everyone smiled like it was normal. I folded my arms carefully. "And tonight somebody expects you to choose a wife." Damien studied me quietly. "Does that bother you?" "It should bother her." Interesting answer. Rain hammered softly against the glass behind him while thunder rolled across the skyline again. Somewhere far below, New York traffic moved through wet streets completely unaware of what happened inside this ballroom above the city. I suddenly felt very small standing there. A waitress with overdue bills talking to a man powerful enough to make entire rooms hold their breath. "Claire." The sound of my name in his voice made my stomach tighten unexpectedly. "Yes." "Do you know what every woman downstairs did before tonight?" I shook my head slowly. "They prepared to become someone I could tolerate." His gaze sharpened slightly. "You are the first person here who spoke to me like I was human." The honesty in that sentence hit harder than I expected. Before I could answer, the balcony doors suddenly opened behind me. An elegant blonde woman stepped outside wearing a silver gown that probably cost more than my college tuition. She stopped the second she saw me standing beside Damien. Her expression shifted instantly from confidence to disbelief. "Damien," she said carefully, "they are ready for you downstairs." Her eyes slid toward me dismissively. "Staff is not allowed on the private balcony during selection." I immediately stepped back. "I was just leaving." "No," Damien said calmly. The woman froze. So did I. Damien picked up one of the untouched whiskey glasses from the table, but never broke eye contact with the blonde woman. "Claire stays." The silence that followed felt dangerous in ways I could not explain. The woman's smile tightened painfully at the edges. "You cannot be serious." Damien finally looked toward her. "Careful, Vanessa." Even his warning sounded calm, which somehow made it scarier. Vanessa's eyes flickered toward me again with open dislike now. "She is nobody." Damien's expression never changed, but the air between them suddenly felt colder. "That," he said quietly, is exactly why she interests me. Vanessa's expression hardened so fast, it almost made me step backward. She recovered quickly, though. Women raised in rooms like this probably learned how to hide emotions before they learned algebra. The families are waiting, she said carefully, her eyes never leaving Damien. Your uncle specifically requested your presence downstairs. Damien took a slow sip of whiskey without reacting. Then my uncle can wait another minute. The silence that followed felt sharp enough to cut skin. Vanessa's attention shifted toward me again. Colder this time. You should return to work. I opened my mouth immediately. Of course. She will stay until I say otherwise, Damien interrupted calmly. The words were quiet, controlled. Somehow that made them impossible to argue with. Vanessa looked at him like she no longer recognized the man standing in front of her. You are embarrassing the family. Damien finally set his whiskey glass down beside the rain-covered window. No, he said softly. I am disappointing expectations. There is a difference. Something about that sentence made Vanessa go pale. She pressed her lips together tightly before turning toward me. Do you even understand where you are right now? I hesitated. A charity gala? She laughed once beneath her breath. That is adorable. Vanessa. Damien's voice carried a warning now. Not louder. Worse. Sharper. She straightened instantly. The women downstairs have spent years preparing to stand beside him. She continued quietly, ignoring the warning anyway. Families built alliances around tonight. Men invested millions into futures already planned. Her eyes traveled over my plain black uniform slowly. And you think a waitress belongs in that equation? Heat rushed into my face. Embarrassment. Anger. Probably both. Before I could answer, Damien spoke first. Enough. Vanessa stared at him for another tense second before turning toward the balcony doors. Your uncle will not tolerate this, she said carefully. Damien's expression never changed. My uncle tolerates whatever I allow. Then she was gone. The balcony doors closed softly behind her, leaving only rain and silence between us again. I exhaled slowly without realizing I had been holding my breath. She hates me. Damien glanced toward the ballroom below. No, really? Vanessa does not hate you yet. The honesty startled a nervous laugh out of me before I could stop it. Damien looked toward me again immediately, like the sound surprised him too. For one strange second, something softer flickered across his face. Gone almost instantly. But I saw it. You should not smile at me like that, he said quietly. My heartbeat stumbled again. Like what? Like I am normal. Thunder rolled outside while soft piano music drifted upward from the ballroom below us. I folded my arms carefully against the sudden chill crawling across my skin. You keep saying things like that. Because it is true. He leaned one shoulder lightly against the marble wall beside the windows. Most people see my last name before they see me. And you think I do not. You looked uncomfortable before anyone told you who I was. I could not deny that. You noticed? I notice everything. The way he said it sent another strange wave of awareness through me. This man missed nothing. Not expressions. Not tone. Not fear. It suddenly made sense why everyone downstairs acted so carefully around him. Damien DeLuca was the kind of person who observed weakness before other people even realized they revealed it. Claire. My name sounded lower this time. More personal somehow. Why are you working here? I blinked. Because they pay hourly. That is not what I asked. I looked down toward the ballroom below, where women in couture gowns smiled beside politicians and powerful men. Tuition, I admitted quietly. Interior design school. His eyes narrowed slightly with interest. You design spaces. Someday. And until then. I shrugged lightly. I carry champagne for people who own penthouses. Another long silence stretched between us. Not awkward. Intense. Like every conversation with Damien existed half an inch away from becoming something dangerous. Downstairs, the silver-haired man returned to the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen. His voice echoed upward through hidden speakers. The DeLuca family selection will begin now. Applause erupted instantly through the ballroom. My stomach tightened. Damien barely reacted. You should go, I said softly. Everyone is waiting. I know. Then why are you still here? He looked directly into my eyes again. Because for the first time tonight, he said quietly, I am interested in something else. Before I could answer, the balcony doors opened once more. This time an older man stepped outside wearing an immaculate black tuxedo with silver hair brushed neatly away from a stern face. Authority radiated from him. Instantly. Unlike Damien's cold control, this man carried old power. Family power. His dark eyes landed on me immediately with visible displeasure. "Who is this?" he asked sharply. Damien's expression hardened at once. "Her name is Claire." The older man ignored that completely. "You kept the families waiting for a waitress?" Damien stepped slightly closer to me before answering. "Careful, Uncle Lorenzo." The older man's gaze sharpened instantly. "Do not test me tonight." Rain hammered harder against the glass while tension filled the balcony thick enough to choke on. Then Uncle Lorenzo looked directly at me and delivered 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Leave before this gets ugly." Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave. Uncle Lorenzo's stare felt like standing too close to the edge of a rooftop. Cold wind. Long fall. Certain consequences. I tightened my grip around the empty tray in my hands and stepped backward automatically. "I am sorry," I said quickly. "I did not mean to cause problems." "Claire," Damien said quietly. "Just my name." But somehow it stopped me from moving farther away. Uncle Lorenzo looked between us with growing disbelief. "You are making a spectacle of yourself." Damien's expression never shifted. "Then perhaps everyone downstairs should stop watching me." "You know that is impossible." Lorenzo stepped closer beneath the dim balcony lights, lowering his voice carefully. "The Moretti family arrived from Chicago tonight specifically because of this arrangement. The Carusas already signed contracts. Do not humiliate them over a stranger." "Stranger?" Funny how that word suddenly hurt. Damien glanced toward me briefly before answering. "Maybe that is the problem." Lorenzo stared at him. "Excuse me. Everyone in that ballroom already knows exactly who they are supposed to be." Damien's voice stayed calm, but something underneath it felt sharper now. More dangerous. "Claire does not." Uncle Lorenzo looked at me like I was something unpleasant dragged in from the rain. "This girl is staff. This girl has a name." Silence crashed between them instantly. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it inside my ears. No one had defended me like that before. Not in rooms like this. Not against men like him. Lorenzo's jaw tightened visibly. "You forget yourself." No, Damien straightened slowly beside the windows overlooking Manhattan. "I think tonight I finally remember exactly who I am." The tension thickened so heavily I almost could not breathe through it. Downstairs, applause echoed again while the orchestra shifted into another elegant melody completely disconnected from the war happening up here on the balcony. Lorenzo looked toward me once more. "Do you understand what kind of man you are speaking to?" I swallowed hard. "I think everyone keeps asking me that." "Then let me answer clearly." His voice lowered another degree. "Men like Damien DeLuca do not belong to themselves. They belong to legacy, obligation, family." Damien's eyes hardened instantly. "Enough." Lorenzo ignored him completely. Every person in that ballroom built expectations around tonight. His attention sharpened on me. "And now, because of you, my nephew suddenly forgets years of responsibility." Shame twisted unexpectedly in my chest. Because part of me believed him. I did not belong here. I knew that from the second I stepped into this ballroom, carrying champagne. Men like Damien married women raised for this world. Women who understood private jets and political alliances and charity galas where nobody really smiled honestly. Not girls from Queens carrying student debt and subway passes. "Maybe I should go," I whispered softly. Damien looked at me immediately. "No, one word. Immediate. Certain." It should not have affected me the way it did. Lorenzo exhaled sharply through his nose. "You are behaving irrationally." Irrational would be pretending I want something I do not. Damien's eyes never left mine now. For the first time tonight, I am being honest. My heartbeat stumbled painfully. This could not possibly be happening. Men like Damien did not look at women like me this way. Not seriously. Not publicly. Especially not in front of family members who looked ready to explode from contained frustration. "Damien," Lorenzo said carefully now, almost like a warning wrapped in silk. "You are crossing a line." Damien finally looked toward him again. Then perhaps the line deserves to be crossed. The balcony doors opened suddenly before Lorenzo could answer. Vanessa stepped outside again, visibly tense. "It is time." Her eyes flickered toward me immediately. "The families are asking questions." "Let them ask," Damien said coldly. Vanessa looked genuinely shaken now. "You cannot do this." "Cannot," Damien repeated softly. "Or should not." Thunder cracked loudly outside, rattling the glass around us. For 1 second nobody moved. Then Damien reached toward the marble table beside him and picked up a small black velvet box resting near his untouched whiskey glass. My stomach tightened instantly. Vanessa went pale. Lorenzo looked furious. And suddenly I understood exactly what this ceremony downstairs really was. Damien turned toward me fully. Claire. The sound of my name in his voice made the entire balcony feel smaller somehow. More dangerous. More intimate. I need you to listen carefully. My fingers tightened around the serving tray. What are you doing? He ignored the question completely. In 30 seconds we walked downstairs. No, the answer escaped me immediately. Absolutely not. Something almost amused flickered briefly across his face again. You are afraid. Of course I am afraid. I glanced toward the ballroom below where hundreds of wealthy strangers waited beneath crystal chandeliers and gold light. Your family already hates me, and I have known them for 6 minutes. Vanessa folded her arms tightly. Smart girl. Damien never looked away from me. Claire. His voice softened unexpectedly. Look at me. I did. Big mistake. Because the second our eyes locked again, the rest of the room disappeared exactly like before. Nobody downstairs decides what happens next except me, he said quietly. Do you understand? Before I could answer, the orchestra below suddenly stopped playing completely. Silence rolled across the ballroom beneath us. And Damien DeLuca reached for my hand. The moment Damien's hand closed around mine, the entire ballroom below us seemed to stop breathing. His fingers were warm, steady, completely certain in a way that made my own pulse feel chaotic by comparison. I should have pulled away immediately. Any sane person would have. Instead, I stood there frozen beneath the dim balcony lights while rain hammered against the windows behind us and Manhattan glowed beneath the storm like another universe entirely. Damien, Uncle Lorenzo warned sharply. Damien never looked away from me. Trust me. 2 words. Quiet. Dangerous. Impossible. I stared at him in disbelief. You cannot seriously expect me to walk downstairs with you. I do. Into a room full of people who already want me gone. They will survive disappointment. I almost laughed from pure nerves. Easy for you to say. They are not glaring at you like you ruined their bloodline. Something colder entered Damien's expression then. Not directed at me. At the situation. At everyone downstairs waiting for him to obey rules he clearly no longer cared about. Claire. His thumb brushed lightly against my knuckles. The movement was small. Controlled. Somehow it made my heart react harder than anything else tonight. Nobody touches you tonight unless I allow it. My stomach tightened instantly at the intensity behind that sentence. Not possessive exactly. Protective. Worse somehow. Because part of me believed him completely. Vanessa stared at our joined hands like she could not process what she was seeing. This is insanity. Damien finally looked toward her. No. This is honesty. You are humiliating every family downstairs. They built expectations without asking me what I wanted. Lorenzo stepped forward immediately. Enough. The authority in his voice cracked through the balcony sharply enough to silence everyone. You are not a child throwing a tantrum because you are bored. Damien's jaw tightened slightly. No. I am a man making a choice. Over a waitress? Lorenzo snapped. I flinched before I could stop myself. Damien noticed instantly. His expression changed so subtly most people would have missed it completely. But I saw it. Calm turning dangerous in slow motion. You will speak to her respectfully, he said quietly. Lorenzo stared at him in open disbelief. You would challenge your own family for a stranger? Damien answered. Without hesitation. Yes. The word hit the balcony like thunder. Vanessa looked genuinely shaken now. Even Lorenzo seemed caught off guard by how immediate the answer was. My chest tightened painfully. Nobody had ever chosen me first before. Not over power. Not over expectations. Certainly not over family. The orchestra downstairs remained silent now, while hundreds of people waited for something to happen. I could feel the tension rising through the ballroom floor beneath my feet. Damien released my hand slowly before walking toward the balcony doors. We are done hiding up here. Panic surged through me instantly. Wait. He stopped immediately and turned back toward me. God. The fact that he stopped so quickly somehow affected me more than anything else tonight. Powerful men usually expected women to follow. Damien listened instead. You barely know me, I whispered. You do not even know if you like me. A softer expression touched his face then. Brief. Real. That is what interests me. What does that even mean? Rain streaked silver across the glass behind him, while the city lights reflected in his pale blue eyes. Everyone downstairs spent years trying to become acceptable to me, he said quietly. You never tried once. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Because he was right. I had been afraid of him, curious about him, completely overwhelmed by him, but never fake around him. I did not know how to be. Damien opened the balcony doors before I could answer. Instantly, the sound of whispers rushed toward us from the ballroom below. Hundreds of eyes turned upward. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The orchestra members lowered their instruments slowly. Every person in that massive room stared directly at us, standing together beneath the gold balcony lights. I forgot how to breathe. Damien stepped forward first with effortless calm. He belonged in rooms like this. I looked like exactly what I was. A girl from Queens still wearing a black waitress uniform while surrounded by diamonds and old money and dangerous smiles. Damien, Vanessa hissed behind us. Think carefully. He did not even turn around. We started descending the grand staircase together while silence spread across the ballroom heavier than music ever could. I could physically feel people staring at me, judging me, wondering who I was and why Damien DeLuca walked beside me instead of the women carefully selected for him tonight. Halfway down the staircase, I realized something terrifying. Damien was not embarrassed, not even slightly. If anything, he looked calmer than before, more certain. The silver-haired host near the microphone forced a strained smile. Mr. DeLuca, he said carefully, the families are eager to hear your selection. Damien stopped at the bottom of the staircase beside me. Crystal chandeliers reflected gold light across his dark suit, while rain thundered softly outside the towering windows. Every person in the ballroom watched him now, waiting. Damien glanced toward me once. Then he looked directly at the crowd and said the words that shattered the entire room. I choose Claire Bennett. The silence after Damien's words felt alive. Heavy, breathing, dangerous. Hundreds of people stared at me beneath the crystal chandeliers like I had just walked into church wearing gasoline. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. The silver-haired host near the microphone looked physically ill. Somewhere near the back of the ballroom, a woman dropped her champagne glass. The sharp crack against marble echoed through the room like a gunshot. I stood frozen beside Damien, while panic crashed through me in waves so strong I thought my knees might give out completely. Damien, Uncle Lorenzo said sharply from behind us. Enough. Damien did not even glance backward. His eyes remained on the crowd. Calm. Controlled. Absolute. I have made my decision. Whispering erupted instantly across the ballroom. Wealthy women leaned toward each other behind jeweled hands. Men in tailored suits exchanged tense looks over whiskey glasses. Every camera phone in the room mysteriously stayed lowered. People here understood survival better than curiosity. Vanessa descended the staircase slowly behind us, her silver gown catching the chandelier light like shattered ice. She looked directly at Damien. You are making a catastrophic mistake. No, Damien replied quietly. I am correcting one. My pulse hammered painfully inside my chest. This could not possibly be real. I was still wearing a waitress uniform. 20 minutes ago, I had been carrying champagne through this ballroom, hoping nobody noticed me. Now the most powerful man in the room had just publicly chosen me over every woman raised for this world. The host cleared his throat nervously into the microphone. Mr. DeLuca, he said carefully, perhaps there has been some misunderstanding regarding the tradition. Damien finally looked toward him. The older man visibly regretted speaking immediately. No misunderstanding. His voice remained calm, but the ballroom reacted instantly anyway. People straightened. Conversations died again. Fear moved through the room like cold air. Claire Bennett is my choice. Hearing my full name spoken aloud like that made my stomach twist. Real. This was becoming terrifyingly real. One of the older men near the front tables stood abruptly. Gray hair. Expensive tuxedo. Face tight with anger. She is not eligible. Damien looked completely unbothered. According to whom? According to every agreement our families built over decades. Another man spoke up immediately. This ceremony exists for a reason. Yes, Damien said softly. To make alliances. Exactly. Then let me be clear. He slid one hand casually into his pocket while thunder rolled outside above Manhattan. I am not interested in alliances tonight. The ballroom exploded into whispers again. I felt dizzy standing there. Like the floor beneath me no longer made sense. Vanessa moved closer to Damien carefully. You are humiliating powerful people. Good. Her eyes widened slightly. Damien. For years they treated marriage like a business merger. His pale blue eyes swept across the ballroom slowly. Tonight they can experience disappointment like everyone else. My throat tightened unexpectedly at the bitterness beneath his words. This was not rebellion for attention. This was years of pressure finally cracking open in front of everyone. Uncle Lorenzo descended the staircase next, his expression carved from stone. You are embarrassing your father's name. Damien's jaw tightened slightly for the first time all night. Do not use my father against me. Lorenzo stopped 3 feet away from us. Then stopped behaving like a spoiled child infatuated with the first pretty face who smiled at him. Heat rushed into my face instantly. Shame, anger, humiliation. I stepped backward automatically. I think I should leave. Damien turned toward me immediately. No, Damien, this is insane. My voice shook now no matter how hard I fought it. These people hate me. They do not know you. Exactly. The room watched us openly now. Every eye waiting to see what the powerful man would do next. Damien stepped closer until his voice lowered enough that only I could hear him. Claire. The softness in his tone nearly undid me completely. Look around this room. I did reluctantly. Cold smiles. Expensive jewelry. Men calculating outcomes behind emotionless eyes. Women staring at me like I ruined years of planning simply by existing. Do you know what I see? He asked quietly. I shook my head. People terrified that I finally made a decision they cannot control. My breath caught slightly. Because suddenly I understood. This was never really about me. It was about Damien refusing to belong to everyone else anymore. Vanessa folded her arms tightly. You are throwing away stability over a fantasy. Damien looked directly at her. No. Then his gaze returned to me again with frightening certainty. I am choosing the first honest thing I have felt in years. The honesty in his voice hit harder than anything else tonight. My chest tightened painfully around it. Before I could answer, another voice suddenly cut through the ballroom from near the staircase. Female. Cold. Sharp enough to slice through glass. Then perhaps she should decide for herself. Every head in the room turned. A dark-haired woman in a deep emerald gown stepped forward slowly from the crowd. Elegant. Beautiful. Dangerous. And judging by the expression on Damien's face, she was the one person in the room capable of changing everything. The woman in the emerald gown moved through the ballroom like she already owned every eye in it. Elegant posture. Dark hair swept over one shoulder in. Soft waves. Diamond earrings catching the chandelier light every time she stepped forward. But it was not her beauty that changed the atmosphere. It was Damien's reaction. For the first time all night, something unreadable crossed his face. Not fear. Not anger. Recognition. The woman stopped a few feet away from us, her expression perfectly composed despite the tension crackling through the ballroom. Sophia Moretti. Vanessa whispered beside me quietly enough that only nearby people heard. The name immediately shifted the room again. Moretti. Another powerful family. Another piece of this invisible chessboard I never should have wandered into. Sophia's dark eyes landed on me first. Not cruel. Worse. Calmly assessing. Like she was trying to understand why the entire night had suddenly fallen apart around a waitress wearing borrowed shoes. Then she looked toward Damien. You should have warned me before embarrassing my family in front of half of Manhattan. Damien's voice remained calm. I did not ask your family for this arrangement. No, Sophia replied smoothly. Your uncle did. Lorenzo stiffened immediately. Sophia, do not worry. She interrupted politely without looking at him. I am not here to create drama. Her attention returned to Damien. Clearly there is already enough of that. Soft, nervous laughter spread awkwardly through parts of the ballroom before dying just as quickly. Nobody here seemed sure what was safe anymore. Sophia folded her hands lightly in front of her emerald gown. I simply think the girl deserves honesty. My stomach tightened instantly. Damien's expression hardened slightly. Be careful. Sophia looked genuinely amused by that. You think I would hurt her? I think you understand exactly what you were doing. Their conversation felt layered somehow. Older than tonight. Like tension had existed between them long before I accidentally entered this ballroom, carrying champagne. Sophia finally turned fully toward me. Claire, right? I nodded carefully. Do you know why this ceremony exists? I hesitated. To create alliances. Exactly. Her voice remained soft. Controlled. Families like ours survive because emotions do not make decisions for us. Damien stepped forward slightly. Enough. No, Sophia said quietly. She deserves the truth before you pull her into your world. The ballroom watched us with terrifying silence. Rain hammered harder against the towering windows, while lightning flashed faintly over Manhattan beyond the glass. Sophia's eyes stayed on mine now. Do you know what happens to people who become important to powerful men? My pulse stumbled painfully. Sophia. Damien's warning carried more force this time. She ignored him. They stopped belonging to themselves. The sentence hit harder than I expected, because deep down, part of me already feared that. Tonight had happened so fast I barely recognized my own life anymore. One minute I was balancing champagne glasses. The next I stood at the center of a war between wealthy families and a man dangerous enough to ignore all of them publicly. Sophia's expression softened slightly as she studied me. You seem kind. That somehow made me trust her less. Which means this world will either change you completely. She glanced toward Damien briefly. Or destroy the parts of you he likes most. Silence crashed heavily between us. I looked toward Damien instinctively. His pale blue eyes never left Sophia now. Cold. Controlled. Furious underneath. You are done speaking for me, he said quietly. No, Sophia answered softly. I think for the first time someone finally needs to. Lorenzo stepped forward immediately, sensing opportunity. Sophia is correct. This has gone far enough. Then leave, Damien replied. The simplicity of the answer visibly shocked several people nearby. Lorenzo's face darkened. You would throw away decades of loyalty over this girl? Stop talking about her like she is property. Damien's voice remained calm, but the ballroom reacted instantly anyway. Men lowered their eyes. Conversations died again. Even the orchestra members sat frozen behind their instruments. Sophia watched Damien carefully for a long second before speaking again. You really mean this? Not a question. Realization. Damien finally looked toward me again. And suddenly the noise, the chandeliers, the whispers, all of it disappeared. Exactly like before. Yes, he said quietly. Not to Sophia. To me. The honesty in his voice hit somewhere deep inside my chest, and stayed there. Dangerous. Warm. Real. I swallowed hard. Damien. He stepped closer. Claire. The softness in his expression nearly undid me completely. I know this is overwhelming. Overwhelming did not even begin to describe it. You do not owe me anything tonight. He continued quietly enough that only I could hear him. Not your loyalty. Not your trust. His eyes held mine steadily. But I need you to know one thing. The ballroom seemed to lean closer around us. Waiting. Damien's voice lowered another degree. If you walk away right now, I will let you go. My heart stopped. Completely stopped. Because for the first time all night, someone powerful had finally given me a choice. Then Damien finished the sentence softly. But if you stay, lightning flashed silver across the ballroom windows behind him. I will never let anyone make you feel invisible again. The entire ballroom disappeared when Damien said those words. Not literally. I could still hear the rain against the windows. Still see crystal chandeliers glowing overhead and wealthy strangers pretending not to stare at us. But none of it felt real anymore. Because no one had ever offered me freedom before, while looking terrified I might actually take it. Damien stood inches away from me beneath the gold light, calm on the outside, but I finally saw it now. The tension beneath his control. The uncertainty he hid from everyone else in this room. He was giving me a choice while silently hoping I would destroy his self-control and stay anyway. My throat tightened painfully around that realization. Claire, Sophia said gently beside us. Think carefully. I looked toward her automatically. The emerald gown. The careful posture. The sadness hidden beneath all her elegance. And suddenly I understood something else too. Sophia was not angry because she loved Damien. She was angry because she understood exactly what choosing him would cost me. You still have your life, she continued softly. Your freedom. Your future. Her eyes flickered briefly toward Damien. This world changes people. I know. Damien said quietly before I could answer. The honesty in his voice pulled my attention back toward him immediately. That is why I am giving her a choice nobody ever gave me. Silence settled around us again. Heavy. Emotional. Real. Uncle Lorenzo looked exhausted now. Older somehow beneath the chandelier light. Damien, he said carefully. You are risking everything your father built. Damien never looked away from me. Maybe he built it so I could finally choose something for myself. The sentence hit the room hard. I saw it in the faces around us. Shock, disapproval, confusion. But underneath all of it, something else too. Respect. Even the men angry at him understood courage when they saw it. My hands trembled slightly at my sides. You barely know me, I whispered again. Damien's expression softened almost imperceptibly. That is true. Then why me? The question escaped before I could stop it. Out of every woman in this room. I looked around helplessly at the diamonds and designer gowns surrounding us. Why would someone like you choose someone like me? For the first time all night, Damien smiled fully. Not the cold, controlled expression he wore for everyone else. Something smaller, realer, dangerous in an entirely different way. Because everyone else in this room spent years trying to impress me. His pale blue eyes held mine steadily. You were the first person who made me feel tired of pretending. My heartbeat stumbled so hard it almost hurt. Sophia looked away first, like she suddenly realized this conversation no longer belonged to anyone else. Rain streaked silver across the towering windows, while thunder rolled softly over Manhattan beyond the glass. Somewhere near the orchestra platform, a violinist quietly lowered her instrument. Nobody in the ballroom moved anymore. It felt like the entire city paused with us. Damien stepped closer slowly, careful enough to let me pull away if I wanted. Claire Bennett, he said softly. If you walk out those doors tonight, I will never bother you again. His voice lowered another degree. But if you stay, emotion tightened unexpectedly in his expression for half a second before. He buried it again beneath control. Then I will spend the rest of my life making sure nobody ever looks through you again. God, the sincerity in his voice almost ruined me completely. Because he meant it. Every impossible word. I looked down briefly at my black waitress uniform. Cheap shoes. Nervous hands. The girl who took subway trains to night classes and worried about tuition bills and worked double shifts carrying champagne for people who never remembered her name. Then I looked back at Damien DeLuca standing beneath crystal chandeliers, while some of the most powerful people in New York waited for his next move like the entire world depended on it. Maybe it did. My voice came out softer than I intended. You really would change everything for someone you just met? Damien answered instantly. I already did. The ballroom went completely silent again. Even the rain seemed quieter somehow. And for the first time all night, I stopped feeling invisible. Not because of the attention. Not because hundreds of wealthy strangers stared at me like I had become dangerous overnight. Because one man looked at me like I mattered before anyone else decided I should. My chest tightened painfully around that feeling. I took one slow breath. Then another. Damien waited without pressuring me. Without demanding. Without controlling. Just waiting. Letting me choose. Finally, with my heart pounding so hard I thought the entire ballroom might hear it, I stepped closer to him instead of away. A visible wave moved through the crowd instantly.